Dr. Adefulu is a partner at Odujiri and Adefulu law firm. Next to him is Mr. Dele Badijo, is CEO, Wando Energy Services. And we have Taufik Adegbite, is CEO, Marine Platforms. And Georgebu is CEO, Petrolog. Perhaps we should kick off with Dr. Adefulu, just to give us his perspective of what the local content directive is and what we should be looking at as we consider the directive.
Okay. Thank you, Somi. It's no longer the local content directive. We now have an act that was passed in 2010, the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Development Content Act. Before that, you had the NMPC Local Content Directive, which required that the international oil companies that were doing business with NMPC had to comply with that directive. So it didn't extend to, for example, companies that had no business with NMPC, the sole risk companies or the marginal fields, etc. And certainly didn't extend to the downstream industry. But the Nigerian Oil and Gas Industry Development Content Act is now much wider. It covers the whole of the value chain in the oil and gas industry. Although the upstream industry seems to be the particular focus. It set up the Nigerian Content Development Monitoring Board, which is based, I think the head office is in Yenagoa, Bayelsa. And very recently, the board has taken a very aggressive approach in monitoring the activities of oil and gas companies, ensuring that they are complying with their obligations under the Nigerian Content Development Act.
Mr. Badijo, so the monitoring board that Dr. Adefulu refers to, have they done a good job in ensuring you actually benefit from the Local Content Act?
Okay, I'll put it this way. When I started in the industry 26 years ago, I'll take a typical the swamp drilling market. All the companies operating in the swamp were international drilling companies. The employees were 45% expatriates. All the key staffs were expatriates. Today, it's a different ball game. There are 7 rigs operating in the Nigerian swamp market. All the 7 are owned by indigenous Nigerian companies. Average personnel distribution is 96% nationals in key positions and 4% expatriates. When you consider the cost of an expatriate coming to Nigeria to work and the cost of salary and all that, you can see, do the math, you can see it's beneficial for the country. Most of the money we get goes to local companies as well. We patronize 70% of indigenous companies. The patronage outside is restricted to original equipment manufacturers that we have to patronize. So for Wando Energy Services, we benefited significantly from that act.
From what you said, obviously getting 7 rigs is capital intensive. So how have you, as a company, gone about raising the required financing?
Okay. That is a key challenge for us. The drilling business is capital intensive. A typical swamp rig new will go for about 120 million, plus or minus what you add to it. $120 million is a lot of money in any currency. And if you have to finance that on a short-term loan, it's a Herculean task. The chances are that you're going to go bust within the next 3 years if you don't. What we have today, the banks we deal with, they give us short-term finances for a long-term project. The typical life of a swamp drilling rig is about 25 to 30 years. So if you then get financing of $120 million at between 15 to 20%, and you're practically working for the banks. Today, more and more foreign banks are interested, and they are offering lower interest rates, which is attractive to us. The challenge will be for the government and the indigenous banks to wake up and start understanding the risk that is in the drilling industry or the upstream industry, and start to provide the right funding to be able to support what we're doing.
Mr. Debite, does your strategy align with what Mr. Panelists just highlighted?
Thank you so very much. I'll start by saying a big thank you for organizing this event, because it's a departure from the norm. I mean, you're now inviting people that are really there. They know where the shoe pinches. And it's not just another academic or some sort of general talk show. Marine Platforms is not far from Orlando Energy. We are in the subsea construction side of the business. The initiative started, we had resistance, of course, from the IOCs. Not simply because they're racist, but because of the high risk involved in their business. A classic, crude price at $100, you want to pump all you can pump. The rig that is actually drilling for you, the spread is $1 million. A delay, of course, you are losing money. So you don't want mediocres to come in, you don't want people that fail you. So it's a ripple thing. Now at the time, we faced it and we respected that weakness and we appreciated where the IOCs were coming from. So we carefully said we need to understand this industry. I mean, we all came in from different backgrounds, and at that time, we got the partners. Carefully, we craved the indulgence of the Nigerian Content Board that, well, these experts will be in front of us, but we have clear transition and development plans.
George, if you want to perhaps share your perspective, I'm aware you have operations both in country and offshore. So how have you grown? How have you seen your businesses in this separate areas grow, and what sort of strategy have you employed?
Yeah, Petrolog is a 30-plus-year-old company. It was one of the first 5 indigenous service companies started. So it was started by a founder at a stage where, and at a time where that was not even a remote idea amongst most parties. So you had to compete at that time with the multinational service companies. You weren't in place, there were no other indigenous companies in the same particular sectors we were in. So that meant you had to provide deliverables that would be equitable to the services and the quality that those other players provided. So it meant for us that we had to step our game. We had to create a procurement and logistics operation, which we had to establish overseas to ensure that we had our supply sides adequately catered to be able to meet with the speed of reaction in the oil and gas sector. Now, because of the Nigerian Content Act, there's more of a reasonable peering into of what this company can do. Is it capable? Can it provide the quality we desire? And so that is a paradigm shift. The expectation and hope we have, and as expressed by my colleagues earlier, is that this shift would occur at a more rapid rate, number one. Number two, that it would also shift within the entire subsector and all the ancillary support areas of the subsector. So we're talking about financing and all the other vendor provided industries and services that work with us, that they would change at the same pace. Because the challenge we face is being able to say, yes, I want to buy a swamp rig or a jackup or even a deep water rig. Why can't I do that?
Perhaps it's important to add, circling back to what was shared around funding of the sector. And FBN Capital, we've spent some time, in truth, that's why we had this panel, on providing solutions for the oil and gas service sector. We appreciate that as much as the sector requires long-term funding, there's also need for perhaps equity-linked instruments, mezzanine finance kind of solutions.